Blessings to you on this Easter tide. You know, things aren't always the way we would have them be. And sometimes things seem very terrible to us. And they may actually be terrible to us, at least from our point of view. In last week's gospel for Easter, we saw some words that we didn't expect to see. We saw words like astonishment. We saw words like alarm. We see words like afraid, and they fled, and trembling, and fear. All of those words were in a reading that we were supposed to be encouraged by, in a reading that we were supposed to celebrate the fact that Jesus is risen from the dead. And we even said before we read this, Alleluia, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed, Alleluia. And then the last words of the gospel that we read were, they said nothing to anyone for they were afraid. Well, those women experienced some terrible things. They saw Jesus die on the cross. They saw fear gripped them because they thought what happened to Jesus could happen to them. And even if it didn't, they were so terribly distraught watching the death of their loved one on Good Friday. And we go through some terrible things. And we can relate to these women. Sometimes we're afraid. Sometimes we tremble. Sometimes we want to run away. Sometimes we experience all those things that would make us feel like there is no hope, that there's just badness in the world. And you know, in a lot of ways, when we look at the world, we see a lot of terrible things. This week's gospel reminds us that even though terrible things are what we see, Jesus is still in control. You know, when the three women went to the tomb, they were expecting to see a dead Jesus because that's what they saw on Friday. They saw a dead Jesus being placed in the tomb. What they saw was a young man sitting on the right side of where Jesus was laid. And he told them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth. He is not here. He is risen." It says, "You seek Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He is not here. See the place where they had laid him?" So the reality is that Jesus was alive. And this changed everything. This means that death no longer has the last say. The things that we are ultimately afraid of, they no longer have the last say. Sure, they bombard us, they make us feel terrible, but the reality is, my friends, in Jesus, things get turned upside down. Things are put back to the way that they're supposed to be. In Jesus, you have peace with God. In Jesus, you have a hope that cannot fail. In Jesus, even in the terrible things that hurt us to our core, even in those things, if we're in Jesus, we understand that He is working even those things for the good. In Jesus, we have joy, even when things seem really, really bad. So this week, I want to really encourage you that things aren't always the way that they seem. Things may seem like death is winning, but the truth is, Jesus has swallowed up death by His death and resurrection on the cross. And He gives those gifts to you and all who would believe in the waters of baptism and in the word proclaimed. He is risen indeed. Alleluia.